Let's build a Dreadnought. So welcome to yet another episode in our Horus Heresy boxed set building and painting log, where it's our goal to build and assemble and then paint the Horus Heresy boxed set. You can see all our previous episodes up here. So far we've built some tactical space marines and we've built some cataphracti terminators and our praetor. Anyway, it's now the time for something you've all been waiting for. It's time to build the Contemptor Dreadnought. And I have to admit I've been looking forward to this one myself also. Anyway, without further ado, let's jump in and have a look. So first things first, we make sure we have all the sprues we need, because it would be quite hard to build without the parts. Well, unless you fancy a scratch build. I'm also going to have a quick goosey gander at the instructions to see if there's anything critical that we need to get right later down the line. But it looks simple enough, so I'm not worried. The build begins with the legs, and in this case, the feet. We can cut them off the sprue. After we cut our pieces off the sprue, we clean them up. Again, I'm using Andy, the knife, and no, I haven't replaced it yet. These are the parts that we need to build the feet. It looks pretty easy, doesn't it? Well, it is. Next up, I grab my glues, and I use two types. One is for gluing big bits, and one for little bits and wicking into seams. There's an affiliate link for these in the corner, because these are the best glues around. So using the Tamiya glue, we glue the parts together, and I usually glue the parts in by putting glue in the parts' socket holes, and we said parts and glues a lot in that sentence. Now remember I mentioned wicking. I'm doing it now, into the creases. We also now glue the flip-flops on. Well, that's what this part reminds me of. Do they even call them flip-flops anywhere else in the world? Or is it just here, in good old Blighty? Once they are on, I wick some more glue in. Imagine gluing flip-flops to your feet. Awesome! Next up, we stick his toes on. Now you get a choice of these, either flat or bending. You need to know what your pose will be before deciding. Mine's going to be standing still, so it's flat either side. We then did some more wicking. Well, I tried to. I missed the holes as the camera was in my face. Did I ever mention how hard it is to do stuff with a camera in your face? Well, it is. Look at that. A beautiful Dreadnought foot. I've actually done two of these. The Dreadnought will need both. Next up, it's more leg parts. We cut them off the sprue using our super duper Tamiya clippers. Get a pair of these, you won't regret it. Here you go, here's all the bits you need for the next stage. You will notice I don't show me cleaning up the parts now. I feel that would have gotten boring fast. You can thank me for that later. So first of all, you assemble the lower leg halves. There's a front and a back to these, so make sure you're paying attention. Now, it's normally around this time in a video I realise my nails have gotten long and manky, but this time I actually cut them before I started filming. I'm starting to get organised. Let me know if you miss my filthy long nails. Now, interestingly, since filming that, my nails have already grown to astonishingly long lengths. I don't know why my nails grow so fast. If anyone out there knows why nails grow fast or slow, please let me know in the comments below. Completely unrelated, I know. More leg parts now. This time we are collecting parts for what I assume you would call the thighs. Here they are. Again, there's another pair of these, but they're done off camera. Check out the detail of those nuts. Lovely. When you assemble them, you end up with this, something that looks a little like a plastic dog biscuit. Have any of you ever eaten a dog biscuit? I haven't. I wonder what they're like. More leg parts. This time it's the top of the leg, the hips, if you will. These have a lovely big ball on the end. I wonder how close they are to a human's hip joint. I assume ours are not made of plastic. Well, unless you get them replaced. I wonder what replacement hips are made of. After you stick all those parts together, you have this, the top of the leg. And then, after we put all those parts together, we have all the bits we need to assemble the legs completely. They sort of remind me of robotic waders or something. Maybe we should create a fishing dreadnought diorama, or maybe not. Now, don't forget the dreadnought has 2 legs, so make sure your second leg is also ready for assembly. I do love checking out the range of motion in the knee. We could easily pose the dread sitting on a bench reading a paper or something, but again we won't. Well, not today anyway. Next up, we need the parts to build the kneecaps. We mustn't forget these. Here they are, lovely little knees, and as the song in Biggles says, sexy knees. As Biggles likes to say, if you can fly a Sopwith camel, you can fly anything. Alright, it's time to work on the Dreadnought's crotch. There's only a couple of parts to this first piece. When they are assembled, they look like this. Not much to say about that part really. We then get the parts together to make the upper crotch. You might call it the Dreadnought's abdomen, as it were. Assemble those pieces and you have this. It's been pretty easy so far and I have to admit I'm enjoying myself. Okay, so according to the instructions, now is when we are supposed to assemble the legs, but I haven't quite decided on a pose yet, so I'm not going to. Let's move past this. We are now going to start on the torso. First up is the rear of the torso. Well, this is interesting. We appear to have assembled a toilet. Someone's at least put the seat down. Very considerate. Next up is these 2 pieces. I'm not sure what they are. I think they might be arm sockets. When assembled, we find out they are indeed arm sockets. The pipes on the back, however, look like they're giving us the finger. Now it's time for this tiny little part. Whatever is it? Let's find out. It's a little shelf for the head, but it's best not to get too far ahead of ourselves, eh? My jokes are getting better every video. It's the head next, and I have to ask, why oh why is it in halves? Especially down the front. What a weird design. I'm going to have to say I think this is a bad design. See, this is why. When assembled you have a join line down the front. Next time I assemble one, I'm probably going to do a head swap and use something from something else. I would suggest you do the same. Well, unless you enjoy gap-filling heads. In between assembly shifts, Wyatt and I decided to take a trip to the local park. He now fits in the baby swings. Well, almost. I think he enjoyed it. Whee! Whee! Now again, the instructions say glue the head in now. I'm not going to do that, as I don't know where I want my dreadnought to be looking. Next up, it's the sides of the torso. I like how they're nice and plain with not a lot of detail. It's more utilitarian that way and leaves room for your own artwork or some decals or something. Stick those parts together and you have this. It's starting to look like a Contemptor now, instead of a toilet. Now, this isn't the front of a Tartaros Terminator torso, this is the front of the Contemptor. Now, do your best to cut it off cleanly and neatly, as this piece needs a nice clean join at assembly. Now, you have to put the head in here, as else with the front of the torso on, it won't fit later. But I'm going to put it in, but I'm still not going to glue it. Now it's in, I can decide on the orientation of the head later. Sometimes I amaze even myself. Now it's time for his lid. This is the top of the torso. We are not going to just glue this on. It's time to wheel out the magnets, and I've a few here to choose from. I glued the magnet on the inside of the Dreadnought's head lid, as it were. Now we can magnetise the head-mounted rocket launcher. I think it's called a Cyclone missile launcher, but it might be a Havoc launcher, I don't know. Once the glue is dry, we can glue the lid on. There we go, the torso is almost finished. There's just one more part. And that's these exhausts. There's not much to these, just a front and a back half. Glue those together and you have this. It's like a miniature version of the plastic Land Raider engines. I suspect that's intentional. Now, I lied about there being only two parts on the exhausts. There's another two, these little panels. There we go, now the exhaust is all complete, ready to be attached to the torso. You can't see it here, but that all assembled together in a really satisfying manner. It kind of slid on. You will understand when you build your own. Well, unless you decided to leave the exhaust off. I don't know why you might do that, so let's move on. So again, the instructions are telling us to glue things together again, and again, I still haven't decided on a pose, so I'm going to ignore them. I feel all this final assembly and posing should be done together at the end. What do you guys think? So it's the arms next, and we have all these fiddly panels that need sticking together. There you go, done. Now sadly I've seen a few of these with big gaps in, so try to take your time here and try not to get gaps in. I say try as it's not the easiest. Next up we begin to assemble the Power Fist. And here are the two halves, all cleaned up and ready to assemble. Glue those two together and you have this. Now, I've cocked up here and shouldn't have glued them together, and you will see why later. We also need to choose a weapon to go inside the fist. I've always been a fan of melter guns, so that's what we're going with. My other choice would have been the graviton gun. What did you guys go with? There we go, those parts are all assembled nicely. It's starting to get very exciting. So when I'm doing some super gluing, usually it's things like magnets or resin miniatures, I often use this superglue activator here with what looks like Slimer from Ghostbusters on there. And at the bottom of the tin here, I don't know if you can make that out, yes you can, it tells you what you can use it on. And it says, if you're enjoying this video, then please consider liking it and subscribing to the channel. That means you, Brian. If you are enjoying the content on the channel, then please consider joining the Patreon, the link to which is in the description below or up here somewhere. Before we can put everything together, we need to make these little elbow joining crease joint things with these two pieces. They are very small. Put those together and you have this. By the way, there's two of these, one for each arm. Okay, so again the instructions are telling us to assemble the fingers, and again I'm not doing that, because again I will do that when I've decided on my pose. It's time to pick the second weapon, and I'm going to go with the multi-melter. Amusingly, on naughty websites, they refer to these as hot melt guns, and I think that's a much better name. Luckily, these magnets I've found fit. I've no idea what size they are, apart from I think they're 1mm thick. They're probably around 4 or 5mm in diameter. I glue one in each side, checking polarity before gluing the gun together. You can then stick the other magnet in these little weapon mounts for the arms. I feel I need to do a more detailed video on how to magnetise the weapons. Hell, you can just ignore them and glue them on if you fancy it. Now everything's magnetised, you can swap the weapons in and out. You could even mount an arm weapon to the top. I'm not sure why you would want to do this, but I felt it looked amusing. I do apologise. There's also this little elbow for the fist arm. Again, I'm going to leave it off for now. Remember we magnetised the top for the missile launcher? Let's assemble that now. Here we go, it's a lovely little weapon. However, there is one small problem. The launcher is attached to the top by 2 feet things either side, not in the middle like I anticipated with my magnet placement. Oh dear. Luckily, I'm an expert bodger and we've just stuck a magnet in the middle and thus created a third leg. A third leg, doesn't a character from Viz magazine have one of those? So it was around here I noticed I have missed a part out. The inner part of the shoulders, so I quickly cobbled those together. With all the little pieces assembled, we can start creating some pose ideas. Blue tack is your friend here. Have a play around and see what you like the look of. Eventually, I decided on a pose and began with the final assembly, starting with the legs. This part is very exciting and comes together quickly after all those little fiddly pieces. Here's my final pose. He's supposed to be looking stoic and intimidating with that slight turn to the waist. Some people like really dynamic jumping poses and the like, but to me they just don't suit dreadnoughts. I imagine them to be bulky and weighty, not dainty and fast. I decided on going with the sharp pointy fingers for my power fist, a bit like my fingernails before I cut them. There are specific fingers for each hole, so make sure you're paying attention and put your fingers in the right holes. There's a joke there, but it's too easy, so I'm not going to say it. With the fingers on, I feel the Dread is looking very imposing indeed. I, for one, would not want to come across one in a dark alley. Very scary. We can now decide on a final head orientation. I'm very glad I waited until now to decide on a pose, as I spent a fair bit of time here deciding on how he shall be looking. When I finally decided on that pose, I wicked in some glue to lock it in position. I was especially proud of the tilt I gave the head, almost like he's sizing up his target. We can glue that elbow pad on now as well. The little horn that sticks out the back reminds me of the stuff that hangs out of horses' legs at the knees sometimes. Those things are weird. Okay, so a quick Google and it turns out they are called chestnuts. Horse chestnuts and not the actual nuts. Very confusing. I stuck the elbow pad on close to the fist so I could get maximum posability. If I put a big gap in there, I wouldn't be able to straighten the arm. As you can see, we now have maximum bending ability. Not that I will need it, it's a gaming piece, not an action figure. Speaking of action figures, has anyone bought one of those Joy Toy things? If so, why? There's also these knee pads. They attach quite easily, but again, I think this time I'm going to leave them off so I can paint them separately. I've a few ideas here for paint, but I'm more than likely to change my mind closer to the time. Due to the magnetisation, we can now swap out weapons willy-nilly. Now that's a term I've not used in a long time. What does it even mean? Where did it even come from? I'm hoping to get a conversion beamer on here at some point. Those are probably my favourite weapons on a Dreadnought. I love the look of them. With everything posed and glued in place, the Dreadnought is actually now completely built. I'm really happy with how this has turned out, even if some parts were a pain. I'm looking at you, unnecessarily halved Contemptor head. I have to say, I'm looking forward to building some more of these. Next up, painting. I think my hat is bent in the middle. So that was building the Contemptor Dreadnought. What did you think of that? Now, if you want to get your hands on your own Contemptor Dreadnought, there's a little affiliate link here. There's another one in the description below. But bear in mind, if you buy your own, you'll actually get some extra parts, as I built mine with the basic kit from the boxed set, but the standalone release contains extra parts to make extra weapons and some extra little detail bits on the chest and head. You'll find out when you go and have a look. Go and have a look. So anyway, like I said before, I did enjoy building that Contemptor, and I'm definitely looking forward to building a couple more, especially to get my hands on other weapons, specifically that conversion beamer, the best weapon in all of Warhammer 40,000. Or Horus Heresy, I should say. Don't attack me for that. I'm sorry. Anyway, I think the next thing we have to build from the boxed set is the Spartan assault tank, and that's one I've also been looking forward to for a long time, and I think that will probably conclude the building videos. Anyway, if you want to see some more of this Horus Heresy boxed set building painting log project diary, I know you do, especially with a name like that, then check out the playlist up here somewhere. As always, thank you very much for watching, and always remember to drill your barrels.